¿Qué tal mis amigos, and welcome back to Panama Reefs. Before I begin this episode, I want to give a big thank you to Inappropriate Reefer for giving my channel a spot on his channel spotlight. It means the world to a small channel like mine to be given such a huge opportunity. Thanks man, you make this community better. Now, in today's episode, I'm gonna talk a little bit about my all-time favorite coral, the hammer coral. This is the coral that I have the most experience with, and the one that I have researched the most about. So I believe that even though I'm just a newcomer to the world of reefing, that I can give you some great and useful information about this gorgeous animal. So let's get started. Hammer coral are a type of LPS, or long polyp stony coral, and they are in the genus Ophelia. Ophelia is one of the most well-known genus of coral, and its siblings are the torch coral and the frog spawn coral. Hammer coral can be easily differentiated from their cousins by looking at the morphology of their tentacles. Mainly, hammers have a tentacle with no divisions that terminate in a hammer or anchor shape. Frog spawn, on the other hand, have tentacles that divide many times before terminating in a ball, and torches have very long, stringy tentacles that resemble anemones. Hammers are actually two different species of coral, Ophelia ancora and Ophelia parancora. The main difference is the way in which they grow. As with frog spawn, hammer coral have a wall and a branching growth pattern. In this case, you can clearly see the skeleton of this hammer and how it grows in a branching pattern. This is the Ophelia parancora. On the other hand, wall hammers grow much like this frog spawn, with a single thick skeleton base without any division. This would be the Ophelia ancora. The different growth patterns of hammer coral mainly have two considerations for the reefer. Wall coral grow much slower, and they are much more difficult to frag. Other than that, both species of hammer coral have the same needs and difficulties. So, what are the things that you need to keep in mind when caring for hammer coral? I will not dig too much into water parameters. At most, I will say that they need between 1.025 and 1.026 in salinity, because, as almost all of us will know, reef quality water has a great range of almost all parameters. I will say, however, that stable water parameters are much more important than chasing any particular number. Therefore, a good source of calcium and alkalinity might be required, since in almost any tank with a decent population of stony coral, water changes alone cannot really maintain constant alkalinity for long periods of time. That being said, in this aquarium I only dose kalkwater, so it is not really necessary to have state-of-the-art equipment to keep these corals. In regards to feeding, hammer coral as most LPS can be fed. However, they do not accept food as easily as sun coral, torches, or acanthophyllia, and most reefers do not go out of their way to feed this coral. The times I have tried to feed this coral, I have done so with mysis shrimp or with a homemade mix of seafood. But this is not something I do regularly, and almost all hammers will thrive without being fed. This can be done because hammers are photosynthetic corals, meaning that they get quite a bit of energy from the light, using their symbiotic relationship with the microorganism called zooxanthellae that live within them. Regarding this, there are two things that we need to know. First, hammer corals require medium to low light, and they require a long period of acclimation before being exposed to a higher light. Second, many reefers experience seeing a brown string of material coming out of the body of the coral. Some in the community refer to this as the coral pooping, and some people even say that this is normal. Sadly, this is a myth. When a euphyllia coral does this, it is not pooping. It is actually expelling some of its zooxanthellae, and it is done as a stress response. More commonly, it happens after exposing the coral to higher light without the proper acclimation procedure, or during a period of deteriorating water quality. Zooxanthellae populations can recover over time if the stress is removed, but in the meantime, the coral's immune system is severely diminished. I believe hammered corals are amongst the hardiest LPS corals, with one caveat. All euphyllia corals have one major enemy: bacteria, specifically a protozoan called Helicostoma. After some stress on the coral, be it a traumatic injury, a decrease in water quality, or a zooxanthellae ejection, euphyllia coral can develop brown goo on their polyps. Brown goo is the effect of the protozoan on the flesh of the coral, and much like the tissue necrosis that affects some SPS coral, brown goo is usually a death sentence for that head, or even for the whole colony. The only treatment I have found for brown goo during my research is the use of a 5-minute dip in fresh water and then placing the coral under moderate flow. Iodine dips might also work, but I have not been able to find any studies that confirm this. And even in the best of cases, some die-off will occur before the infection is cured. So this is clearly a case where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And since most euphyllia corals retract and expand their polyps very obviously in response to any stress, there is no real excuse to having this animal suffer. When thinking about placing these corals in your tank, there are a few things that you will need to consider. First, the flow in the desired area is important. Most hammered corals enjoy moderate to low flow, just enough to let the coral exchange nutrients and oxygen efficiently with the surrounding water. Any more flow than that will cause the flesh of the polyp to retract in an effort to avoid trauma of the very delicate flesh of the coral. The other important thing to think about is who are their neighbors. Euphyllia coral have a pretty strong sting, and they can kill off stony corals with ease. Also, they expand quite a lot more than you might expect from how the frag looks in the store, so it is crucial to give them a good buffer zone between them and any other coral. Hammered corals are compatible with other hammers and with frog spawn, so it is possible to have their tentacles touch. This cannot be done with torches, since torch corals have different nematocysts. A nematocyst is the stinging cell of the coral, and the ones in torch coral are very damaging to hammers and frog spawn. But even if hammers and frog spawn can touch each other, it is recommended to give them some space, like in this group, since the touch of another coral can function as a growth inhibition stimuli. Think about it like if you are packed together with other people in an elevator. They don't really hurt you, but it's not like you can be truly comfortable and move freely. The last thing to know about this coral is how to propagate them. In the wild, hammered corals have sexual reproduction. In fact, some hammered corals are female and others are male. But there has not been much progress in the sexual reproduction of coral in artificial environments. This means that the only way to propagate this coral is to frag them. Here is where the difference between wall and branching types becomes an issue. branching coral are very simple to propagate. You can simply snap the base of the coral where there is no flesh, and later dip them in an iodine solution. The iodine will prevent any possible bacterial infection caused by any undue trauma during this process. And the fragging, when done well, will not cause any damage to the coral tissue itself. So, it is a very easy and safe procedure that almost any hobbyist can successfully accomplish. Wall coral are a completely different story. They cannot be fragged without damaging the very delicate coral tissue, so it is usually done with a wet saw to get the cleanest cut possible, and afterwards it is essential to get them into an almost sterile environment. Even if this is done by experienced hands, and in the best of cases, there is almost a 20% failure rate, and since this type of hammer grows so much slower to begin with, it is usually not worth the trouble for most reefers. In the end, hammered corals are one of the best type of coral to keep, and they come in many different color varieties and add a lot of movement to any tank. Also, since they change their size very dramatically when under any stress, they give even the most inexperienced reefer clear signs if the coral is unhappy. I would easily recommend this coral, especially the branching type, to any reefer who is ready to take a step beyond the softies that most people get as their first coral, since they are quite cheap, hardy, easy to propagate, and easy to keep happy. I will end this video by saying that I am not an expert and I am not a marine biologist. My field of studies is in healthcare, so it is entirely possible that I made a mistake in this video. Please use this video only as a starting point in your research of this coral, and do not take my word as truth by itself. If you have any question, correction, or advice, please write them in the comments below. I will read and respond to all of them. With that said, I really hope you liked this video and that you learned something new from it. So, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!